When your player attempts to make a check, they want to climb a ladder, or they want to scale down a hill, or they want to just try and cheat at some dice games in a tavern, you, the DM, are responsible for setting the DC of this check. You should be aware of your character's level and roughly their capabilities when it comes to their stats. And with that in mind, you should be able to set a DC appropriate to the skill that they're trying to do. If they are trying to scale a sheer cliffside with nothing more than their 50 feet of hempen rope and a can-do attitude, the DC is probably going to be fairly high. If they're trying to catch a turtle that's in a little small pond of water, the DC is probably going to be fairly low. But the whole point of setting a DC is that the character is now going to make a dice check to see if they can meet or exceed the DC that you, the DM, have put in place. However, if the skill check they're going to try and do is not something that can be achieved in any way, don't bother with setting a DC. That sheer cliff that they want to scale with nothing more than a 50 feet of hempen rope and a can-do attitude, don't bother setting a DC. Just tell them that after looking at the cliffside and looking at the equipment they have, they've come to the conclusion it's probably impossible. If they still want to try, let them try, but don't make them roll for it, because there's no possible way they're gonna get up there. Because you see, the thing is, the moment you make your characters roll, you've introduced the ability or the chance that they can succeed. Because if they decide to roll an athletics check and they roll a natural 20, they, the character and the player, are expected to succeed. They rolled the highest roll they possibly could. But you, the DM, then tell them it's a sheer cliffside, you can't make it up that cliff. Then don't bother making them roll for it. The roll is now pointless, there was no need to set a DC, there was no need for them to roll for it. Dungeons & Dragons is about rolling dice, of course, and everybody loves to roll dice for the chance of getting that natural 20 and succeeding on a very, very difficult check. But not everything can be achieved through simply rolling a natural 20. Your players' expectations cannot be that if they roll a natural 20, they can succeed at everything. This is a fantasy game, but there has to be limitations for it to feel real. Because if a character could look at a sheer cliffside and want to scale it with nothing more than a can-do attitude and 50 feet of rope, and all they need to do is roll a natural 20, then there's no point. All they need is that 5% chance that they're gonna roll the natural 20, and up the wall they go. So don't be afraid. When it comes to your environments and your games, if your characters want to try and achieve something that they physically can't, or just would be impossible to do, don't make them roll for it. The moment you introduce the ability to roll for it, there is an expectation that if they roll the highest possible, they have succeeded. And if you are going to sit there and say that even if they roll a natural 20, they won't succeed, then there is no point in making them roll for it. There is no point in giving them that expectation and that hype of possibly rolling a natural 20 with it meaning nothing. Could you imagine your players sitting there and they don't meet the DC that you set in your head, and they go, out of curiosity, what was the DC? Oh, it was 28. How on earth were they ever supposed to roll a 28 at level 2? Don't be afraid to tell your players no. I'm sorry. It's impossible. You can't be done. And it feels bad being a DM to tell your players no, they can't do something. Trust me, I know. But it will feel even better when the players can achieve something and they do roll for it and they do meet or exceed your DC. Because if you set aside certain things that can be achieved and can be earned versus everything, then those certain moments will feel much more well earned and much more memorable to the player for actually making it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, tell your friends. If you didn't, you tell me. Thank you very much to my Patreons for supporting me throughout this. You guys are awesome. With that said, have yourselves a good one, everybody. Skål.